Welcome to International Fund Investments' first webcast from Luxembourg. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon here in Luxembourg, although I'm afraid you wouldn't know it with these heavy curtains that we have behind us. We have, I think, about 150 people around the world.
Back up a bit, and I asked the first question is, do you want a regulated or an unregulated fund? In my view, if you want an unregulated fund, then the answer is pretty simple. You go to the Cayman Islands, where statistically and practice is clearly the leading jurisdiction for purposes of unregulated vehicles. And in that sense, it's a pretty clear choice. If you want a regulated structure, however, then I think the European jurisdictions are clearly the places to go.
Thanks to UCITS, thanks also to the tremendous work over the last 20 years, Luxembourg is a recognized center for distributions, is the most famous product for a well-known famous branding, UCITS, and there is no reason to believe that in the context of further regulations, especially on the non-UCITS space, including hedge funds, that Luxembourg has not a good card to play.
Because Luxembourg is by far the most recognized UCITS brand name, if you wish, associated with the UCITS brand name.
UCITS, although it's a European brand, has become a Luxembourg brand.
But I think the trend is clearly towards regulated products. And again, if you look at that, I would say that the answer is a European fund, a UCITS fund. And in that context, again, I think Luxembourg would be the most appropriate jurisdiction.
We have another vehicle that is probably less well known, which is a Part 2 fund. It's a fund for retail investors, but without the European passport. And thirdly, we have the SIF regime. SIF stands for Specialized Investment Fund. And the SIF is reserved to well-informed investors. It's a bit like the Irish QIF and PIF. It is very flexible. It doesn't have the European passport, but that is really the first alternative to a non-regulated fund. So we see a major trend for SIFs. In particular, it depends on jurisdictions, but the French, for example, after Madoff, have been quite cautious when it comes to investing in non-regulated funds. They also have a lot of political pressure, regulatory pressure not to invest in those vehicles. Obviously, their politicians and regulators would prefer that they invest in French vehicles, but they don't offer the same flexibility, and therefore we see, for example, for French asset managers, a real appetite to redomicile into SIFs. It will always be the first alternative, but it will always be more expensive, more difficult, and it will always take more time.
Just like, let's say, UCITS brand is associated with Luxembourg, when you say hedge fund, everyone thinks Cayman automatically. So, let's not lose sight of that they are by far the primary jurisdiction in the hedge fund space. And whatever other jurisdictions get is going to be, I think, by definition, a smaller slice of the pie.
Is Luxembourg the place to be for the hedge fund manager who still now are launching most of their funds in Cayman? Maybe, maybe not. And I'm back to the statement of Bill. There are various hedge funds in the spectrum and various type of investors interested in those hedge funds. We just believe humbly that Lux has a fair market share to take on the regulated side of the future non-UCITS, including IFM or not. On the SIF side, in this form or in the future form, and probably we talk about the big players. Big players, definitely.
I think there's no doubt we're only talking about trend here. It's, as you just said, and I think we perfectly understand that in Luxembourg, there's only 1 in 10, if not less, that fund manager that decides to create a regulated fund. But you see that trend increasing, and in particular because of the appetite for UCITS. I just received yesterday a survey from a company called KDK Asset Management, and they questioned 60 fund distributors on where do they think, what is the preferred domicile for a new UCITS fund using alternative strategies. And 12% responded Ireland, 59% responded Luxembourg, and 23% said indifferent. So, of course, that is just, if they decide to go onshore and do a UCITS, where would they go? But it's true that sophisticated UCITS represents a very small percentage of hedge funds.
Okay.
Those who decide to transfer assets to regulated jurisdiction, we have a large share of the non-English speakers.
Yes.
But the larger shares of the English speakers go to Ireland. We might not like it, but I think that's a fact. And mainly, my analysis, it's mainly because UK lawyers and US lawyers would usually push for Ireland. It's usually the investors, especially European continental investors, that push for Luxembourg.
Yeah.
Well, even that I think is changing to some extent. Let's just say I have a lot of friends in the US and UK legal communities, and I've been predicting for about 2-3 years now that they will come to Luxembourg against their will, probably with a gun to their head, because they want to use Ireland, but their investors will tell them to come, and I think that's starting to happen. You ask about the service providers, capabilities, depth, experience, et cetera, in the alternative space. The flip side to that is that Luxembourg, in my opinion, has a breadth of services that a manager can come here. He can do regulated and lightly regulated, use its traditional long-only alternative. So, if, as a manager, as a manager, you can come here and establish an asset management platform as opposed to a hedge fund or private equity or whatever other sector you want to focus on within the portfolio universe.
We should be very clear. Luxembourg is not in favor of that directive. We would prefer that it not be there. And as a lawyer, I must say, it's really painful to have to work on such poor drafting. And so we are not in favor of it. The problem is it's likely to be imposed on everyone, including us. And it's likely that as long as it is better drafted, Luxembourg will benefit from it. But we're not in favor of it.
We're not against regulation, we're against bad regulation, and that's clear that this is bad regulation in my view.
I have the feeling we're not going to avoid it because there's so much political pressure to do something, and as long as it has to happen, we prefer that it happens quickly, and at least that we have clear rules and we can work on it.